Well, the question that we've really been getting for a lot of years is, do I have to use premium fuel? And so that's kind of what we're going to answer today.
Huh? Still working?
Is it too low? Welcome back to All Things Acura. This is Matt.
And I'm Justin. And we got a special guest with us today.
We do.
For our first time on this show.
And maybe our last time. You never know.
You just never know what might happen, right? We have invited some experts because we, a lot of times, might not have all the answers to what we want to talk about.
That's right. And sometimes we think we know what we're talking about, and then ultimately we find out that we really don't. And so that's why we have to kind of pass it off to the experts sometimes. And so we invited Todd, if you want to go and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Todd Baldinger. I'm service manager here at Serra Auto Park.
So Todd has been with the Acura brand now for a little while, but was with Honda prior to that. So he's got some in-depth knowledge on the Acura vehicles and Honda vehicles. And we had a question from one of you guys as we get in, with your comments and feedback, which was great, that asked us what driving mode got on the fuel economy. And that kind of led us down a little rabbit hole of the bigger question that we wanted to try to help people understand about cars, because gas prices are through the roof today. To be exact, I think they're at like $4.80 a gallon right now across the country, which is craziness.
And it always brings up the question, we get these questions as a salesperson all the time, what kind of gas should I use? What is Acura doing? Do you have any hybrids, things like that? So it kind of went down this rabbit hole of the question that we've really been getting for a lot of years is, do I have to use premium fuel? And so that's kind of what we're going to answer today. And just to kind of, reiterate what Acura's definition of recommends premium fuel is, I believe it's 91.
Correct.
Okay, so that 91 is the recommended fuel. In Ohio here, and this is something kind of goofy, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know where 91 is. I don't know if they offer 91 at any station around us.
Back up a little bit. I think you're jumping ahead of the viewers. Maybe Acuras do say require 90 premium fuel.
Recommend, yeah.
Recommend, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Whereas years ago they used to require it. So we brought in Todd to really kind of define that a little bit more than maybe what we would, because he is the expert. And we could talk about, the benefits of using it or not using it, and do you need to, and should you, and
because
based on what we know.
Absolutely, yeah, because obviously that's the main question people get. So yeah, Todd, if you want to go ahead and, let us know a little bit about what you know. And
I think the big thing people ask, as they're standing there at the pump and they can see that, and I, looked this up, and I apologize, I did this a couple days ago, but it's really the same spread. Regular across the country was at $2.25, and premium was at, $2. Did I say $2? Holy cow.
Whoa.
We wish it was $2.
This wasn't a couple days ago. This was
last
14
year.
years
That
ago.
was last year.
This is when Justin was in high school, which
last week, it's $4.25, and premium fuel is $4.90. So almost 68 cents difference. And so that you ask yourself and you say, well, is it worth spending 68 cents more a gallon? What are my benefits I'm getting out of this? Well, that's the big question, right? Is it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a touchy subject, to be honest with you, just because we're going against what manufacturers saying that we should use. So using the premium fuel, there's a lot of benefits to that. A lot of it has to do with the burn ratio inside that engine when it's using and consuming fuel.
So from what I understand, and there will probably be some of our viewers out there that maybe have a more advanced degree in chemistry and can probably tell us the exacts. They'll correct us really fast, Todd.
Yep.
But the higher the octane, it means the more efficient that fuel burns with inside the cylinder.
Correct. Yeah, it's the resistance of burn inside that cylinder, actually. So the more resistance that you have, okay, the more that you're going to have problems with the type of burning, type of running of that engine. It's actually using as much fuel as it needs to use rather than not using enough fuel, causing the engine to misfire and stuff down the road eventually.
Right. So going to a lower grade, potentially what happens is and this is where we lean on you a little bit. So potentially what happens is you're not burning the fuel very efficiency as you drop down into the octane levels. A little side note there, and this is where we start to go down some rabbit holes. I see that Colorado offers 85 octane.
Oh.
So I guess maybe with the thinner air they can get away with that.
That is true. Yep.
So we are talking to people across the country. I did not realize that, our pumps here, it's kind of 87, 89, 91 or
93,
or 93, depending on what gas station you go to. So I didn't realize that there were even places out there that offer. I mean, it seems like garbage gas when you look at it from our side. But maybe that works in some climates.
Yeah, other manufacturers use an engine that says flex fuel. So that engine actually is able to run off of those 85 octanes and stuff like that. So it has to do with the compression of the engine and all the other stuff that really goes into the engineering side of it to actually use that type of octane efficiently.
Right.
Okay, so there is no catastrophic issue with the engine.
And maybe, I guess another question to ask with that is, what does the octane rating mean?
That is resistance, actually.
Oh, okay.
Octane means resistance.
Okay, so is a higher number means less resistance or more? Or how does that work? Do you know?
Essentially what it means is the lower the number, the higher resistance that it has to burning. So a 91 octane should burn at a faster rate.
I got you. Okay.
But nowadays with our cars, we have high pressure fuel lines. Okay, so they're pressurizing the fuel in fractions of seconds to actually be introduced into the engine to actually have the injection and burning and all that stuff. So there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of engineering that goes into that stuff. And we can go down some serious rabbit holes when it comes to all of this stuff. But essentially what it means is whatever that engine is made to do, they want to put the most efficient fuel into it to avoid a lot of other things down the road. And we can get into some of those other things.
Yeah, we can touch on what's the long-term effect of that versus using a higher octane gas. When you're talking about the higher pressure, I guess, and maybe a lot of people don't understand that all the new vehicles are direct injection, and direct injection is a much more high pressure system than what you had in your old just regular fuel injected cars, right?
Correct.
So that efficiency needs to be even greater.
Correct. Correct. There's a lot of engines have changed so much that when you have a direct injected engine, you're always going to have waste fuel. Every engine's not going to burn off 100% of the fuel that's actually being introduced into the engine. And that waste fuel has to do a lot with the resistance. What happens to that fuel that's not being burned off and used? It creates carbon buildup inside the engine. That fuel can get dumped down into your oil, which means more oil changes more frequently. The oil gets used pretty quickly. And then also coming out of your exhaust, it comes through your exhaust and actually gets hit by your catalytic converter. So that fuel actually goes through many aspects of the car.
Right, absolutely. That's a great point, because those are reason everyone's kind of telling us, well, I don't have to do that. In fact, the one thing I was going to bring up here saying this is that it feels like nowadays people I hear this sentiment that like Acura used to require the premium, but now they don't require it, right? It's more of a recommendation really, and people kind of have the sentiment that, okay, nowadays I can probably put in a lower grade to do better, and maybe it sounds almost like the opposite, because the cars have to run so efficiently with how they operate that they are better off with the more recommended fuel, right?
Yeah, correct. And a lot of this too is that a lot of people have a misconception that if they put that 87 in, that their car is going to start to run not very well immediately, and that's not really the case. Now you will notice tank after tank that your miles per gallon is not going to be what the manufacturer recommends on the sticker and everything else when you buy your car.
And just while you're on that subject, and
Yep.
Todd mentioned this at the beginning, he said that, it's recommended. We're talking in a gray area because we should be recommending it per se because we're the Acura dealer, right? We should go along with that recommendation. So what you do lose is the performance across the board that you get with, and that performance is not just stepping on the gas, it's fuel economy, horsepower, torque, all the things you lose when you drop down and go to a lower octane.
Correct. You don't have the right burn ratio inside that engine to produce the 300 horsepower, whatever the horsepower rating is. You start to lose that over time.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what I gathered from just doing a little bit of scratch the surface research on, okay, so what's the world being told on this? Some places are saying, gosh, it's a complete waste of money to use higher octane fuel, like that you won't get any benefit out of it. And, I think you can probably find tests that go both ways. I think you can find people that talk both ways. Yeah. The one thing that's for sure is the manufacturer is not in bed with the gas company. So there's no manufacturer doesn't have a reason to recommend that unless they specifically designed that vehicle to use that fuel for a reason, right? There are some added benefits. They do get some additional performance and stuff out of premium fuel, but they have no reason to say that unless there is benefit to saying it, right?
Yeah, and it's for longevity, a lot of it too. They want these. You buy a very expensive car, they want people to own that car for a very long period of time. And to do so, you got to make sure that it's running as efficiently as it possibly can. And doing that is making sure no different than your oil changes during the recommendations, transmission fluids, all of those fluids and stuff like that is to keep that car running for a very long time.
So to kind of ask the question, because I know you spent a lot of time with Honda, and obviously Acura and Honda, a lot of similarities with the engines that they use. So, why, you look at an MDX or a Pilot, and the Pilot, obviously Hondas I don't think they have any cars other than like the Type R that recommend premium fuel. So why use premium fuel in an Acura over a Honda? And I hear terms like compression being thrown
There
around.
are different compression ratios and stuff like that. Even though that you look at their engine types and stuff like that and see a 3.6 liter and they have a 3.6 liter, whatever the engine is, and they have across the board between an Acura and a Honda, they have that same displacement of engine. There is differences, okay? There is tuning differences. They're subtle, but they're enough to make a difference. I mean, we're talking when that fuel gets introduced into the engine, fractions of seconds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And those fractions of seconds, even though it's the same engine and stuff like that, could have a totally different outcome when you're talking years and years and years of quote unquote abuse of not being done what the manufacturer recommends.
Right.
So what I gather, and obviously you can, we want you as a consumer to take your own piece on whether you want to use the extra fuel or not, whether you buy into the fact that the premium fuel has any benefit from you. But from what I gather, Todd, from what I see, is that if you drive the car a little more aggressively, you like getting up to speed a little bit faster than most, you like the performance in it, the premium is going to not only benefit you in performance-wise, but also fuel economy. Whereas if you're just an everyday driver and you just kind of get from point A to point B and you cruise along on the highway at normal highway speeds, there's probably no real benefit you'll ever see out of higher octane other than maybe a long-term,
Long-term, correct. And a lot, too, has to do with temperature. So here in Ohio, I mean, it gets pretty cold. So that higher fuel burning at a faster rate will give you the best fuel economy in the wintertime than what an 87 fuel will. And it has to do with temperature at that point too. So there's a lot that goes in with it. And when we were talking, off camera, you're talking $30 a month. $30 a month extra that you're paying for premium fuel compared to the 87, and $30 a month to tell you that engine's going to run top notch, and we don't know what the duration's going to be. $30 a month isn't really that much.
So what Todd was referring to is we kind of just did the math for you because a lot of people don't dive into it, and actually we general feeling when we
Yeah.
talk to people come in and look at a car. Some people are very averse to any cars that use a premium fuel because they just have this in their vision, in their mind, how many thousands of dollars it's going to cost them. And it really isn't that big of a difference. And we'll break that down. One thing I want to make sure people understand is, the side effects. If they want to use a lower grade, what can that side effects be long term? You mentioned carbon buildup in the engine.
Correct.
Are there other ways to kind of avoid that carbon buildup, or versus just using a higher octane?
There is. I mean, every car that's direct injected doesn't have to be an Acura. It can be any car that's direct injected. It needs to have an induction service every 5 years or 50,000 miles. It doesn't matter if you're using premium fuel. It doesn't matter if you're using 87. Obviously, you're going to have a lot more carbon buildup with 87 than you are with the premium fuel. So therefore, the induction service could take a little bit longer. It could be a little bit more in depth of cleaning out that carbon buildup.
So there is a preventative to what the long-term effects could be.
Correct.
And keep that, and so the carbon buildup is what's happening inside the engine with a greater chance of happening as you use a lower octane fuel that's not getting burned, it's getting left behind in the cylinder and all the pieces and parts in there, right? Mm-hmm. So you guys. There is a recommended service for that cleans that up. That's good to know. That wasn't why we brought you here, but that's stuff we're learning, right?
Yeah, and there's also, here at Serra Acura, I mean, not to throw out what we provide or anything like that, but we do offer a fuel additive, okay? A fuel additive at least once a year that we put into your fuel tank that helps with the carbon buildup as well. Because we don't know what people are using as fuel. Yeah. It's preventative maintenance. Doesn't matter if you're using 87 or 91. This still goes in there preventatively and runs through a tank of gas. And essentially it burns off as much as it possibly can. It does not prevent us from having to do the induction service. That's still manufactured.
But it's kind of like when you go to your dentist and they still give you that little cleaning.
I was gonna say it's kind of like flossing, right? Putting in the higher, the premium fuel is like flossing, right? It's the little thing that your dentist tells you to do. Like, yeah, I floss, I know, and then I know you gotta do it every day, and they're like, well, what if I do it some days and some days, I don't, right? And so the more you do that, the less potential future issues you might have. I was just thinking that's a great analogy, but and that's leading to kind of another little question I had. The other question I have is, do I have to do it all the time? Can I mix fuels? Does that?
Yeah, a lot of people ask, well, should I use a mid grade or can I use this one every now and then? What's your advice on that?
Well, I mean that's a touchy subject too. I mean it really doesn't. We're not seeing anything currently that is saying that don't use 87 whatsoever. Okay, so I don't want to lead people down the road that they can't use 87 whatsoever.
Right.
So that it's going to be a vague answer. To be honest with you, a lot of people when they do use 87 quite a bit, we do test fuel. Okay, if they're having a miles per gallon issue. We can test, the quality of the fuel. They can even do it themselves. Okay, so if they get bad gas somewhere, you can actually send it off to a lab, and they can actually test that fuel and see if there's water in the fuel or whatever the case may be. So to see any benefit to using 87 to save some money, I would say that if you're hard up with money and those types of things, and you need to save a couple extra bucks, it's not going to damage your car in that sense, like immediately. Okay,
and that kind of leads me to the next vague answer you're going to give me is. No, it's just I realize it's a vague thing because there's part of it obviously is because it's recommended, right? And we could talk about this in a little bit as far as a sales standpoint when someone's asking me, do I have to do that? And they're comparing other cars and manufacturers out there that potentially don't. So I get that. Warranty, I get that question a lot too. Like, hey, if I don't use, the premium fuel, does that affect my warranty?
Well, technically speaking, I mean, Acura owns the rights to pay a claim and deny a claim. Okay, so if there is something within a warranty time frame that we are looking into the shop, if they want us to, if they send out an engineer, to figure out what the heck is going on, they can pull some fuel. They can figure out what kind of fuel that is. Okay, but again, we're kind of at the mercy of the gas station too. Who's to say that they didn't click on the 91 and they had 87 in the tank?
Sure.
You never know that. Okay?
Well, and that's where the gray area
That
comes
is a very
Yeah.
gray area, and you can't really. We're trusting into a lot of people that they are actually doing what they're supposed to do. So to avoid any of this, I would say that, again, your car's not going to break down using 87. There are fuel additives that you can actually put into and run through for carbon buildup and those types of things to kind of, it actually boosts up the octane just a little bit.
About $30 a month worth.
It could.
And you can do some preventative maintenance. And what was that service called?
It's an induction service.
Induction service.
Yep.
And that cleans the injectors,
Correct.
assume,
We actually physically will go into the engine and actually clean off the injectors and those types of things.
Typically speaking, how long is that service?
About 2 hours long.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 hours
Okay.
long. And again, it's every 5 years or 50,000 miles.
Okay.
So if your car, if you don't, during these times you're not driving that much, definitely every 5 years get that done.
Yeah, one thing that Todd said when we were actually talking about the subject that I thought was pretty good advice that we just sometimes don't think about. It does a car good every now and then to actually be ran a little harder than maybe what you might typically do in your day-to-day driving, because that carbon buildup gets in there. Mm-hmm. And what happens is a long-term effect of just driving normal and stop and go and never really putting the engine through its paces doesn't clean that up any, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people actually, when they drive, half the time they're not even driving far enough to actually heat the car up.
That's true,
right?
So if you're not getting the car up to temperature, okay, if you're not getting on the highway and just going, 45 minutes away from your house or anything like that, you're just stopping and going, and you're really not heating that car up. Now, most of these cars are so efficient, and this plays into the fuel too. If I start up my car and I live 10 minutes away, okay, if I start up the car and I just putz all the way into work, I'm typically not going to get it up to temperature until I'm about 3 to 5 minutes away from here.
Right.
But fuel economy has a lot to do with that too. So if I'm not using a proper fuel, it's not heating up, it's not doing its job, it could take a little bit longer. So there's where your fuel economy comes in as well.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good. Great stuff. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know that we want to really give an answer one way or another. It sounds like though, from the bigger picture, regular is okay. Mid-grade would be better. I don't know that there's a whole lot of benefit. Premium, obviously, if you're okay with it and you're comfortable with it. I know gas prices are high, so it's harder to hit that button today than it was a year ago. It's jumped up a lot, so people think, well, I'm not getting much benefit out of that. Or if I am getting a benefit out of it, and that's kind of what we wanted to bring to light. What's the good and bad of doing that? I did do some little calculations, because again, we had people come in all the time saying, gosh, it costs just thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm not doing that every year to drive my car. It's not that much. So the difference between regular, and this was as of a week ago, but these dollar amounts, the difference hasn't changed much. If you took a new RDX that gets on average from the manufacturer claim of 23 miles a gallon, drove it 12,000 miles a year, based on the difference, it's under $30. It's $29 for the difference that you're going to pay more to drive it on the 91 octane or 93 octane, whatever's at the pump at the highest point, right? The premium fuel, as they say, right?
And that's per month, right?
That's per month, per 1,000 miles of driving. So for a year, that's $350 a year.
Right.
Right, when you break it into a year, $350 to drive on an Acura, which, premium product, I don't think is extreme. Some people might say, well, that's still my $350. Well, over 5 years, that's $1,750. And so you say to yourself, I paid $45,000, $50,000, $70,000 for this car. Over 5 years, $1,700 is probably not an extreme amount of money to say I want to keep my car running in tip-top shape. That it's not to sway you one way or another. It's probably, though, not as much as you think it is. And granted, if you're driving 18,000, 20,000 miles a year, that's a lot more driving. But that's also a lot different type of driving. And probably, if you're driving it on a highway at 65, 70 miles an hour, maybe there is a difference there, right?
Yeah. There definitely would be a difference. I mean, especially like speaking on the Acura brand, the IDS systems that we have on this, the driving type systems on here, Sport mode, Sport Plus, normal, comfort, and now, we have snow mode and those types of things on the new MDXs. They all play in a factor. Now, they're not going to be your cheat button, so to speak.
Sure.
Okay, we're not going to save 20 miles to the gallon or anything like that, but we definitely can burn through a lot more fuel in Sport and Sport Plus.
Right. Yeah. So if you're looking to save a little bit, maybe on fuel economy, that's a great point. We did have someone ask us, what mode should I drive my car in to get the most efficiency out of it? And that's probably the comfort mode on most of the vehicles. I think that's pretty common across the lineup.
Comfort and normal are the same.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
Right. And we don't have an econ mode. So, and I know, I drive a Honda Odyssey. So, when I put my car in econ mode, I'm sure that's similar to our comfort mode. Mm-hmm. And so, the one thing I find myself doing when I put it in that type of mode is, I still have to push on the gas to feel like I need to get it going, especially if I'm doing city driving. So I'm wondering, by doing that, am I actually making it worse for myself by doing so?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you're one to not want to push on that gas pedal harder, then I would say that switching into Sport, if you're doing some in-town driving, 10 minutes down the street or whatever, it's probably going to benefit you a little bit. Obviously, the car is going to be more responsive.
Right.
You definitely want to, when I say get on it, I want to say that you just don't want to Sunday drive it.
Right.
Okay. You want to make sure that you're revving up the engine and get
those
going.
RPMs up and everything.
I'm not condoning speeding or anything like that, but we definitely want to get the engine up to temperature and up to speed.
Right. Get some of that carbon that does naturally get built up in there, no matter what gas you're using, and keep it as clean as it can by itself.
Yep.
Right. So, that gives us a lot of insight. I know that is a super gray area, and nobody wants to talk about it, but you got to answer those questions, right? Right, wrong, otherwise. I know every time I go to the gas station, I stare at it, especially now, right? At $4.90 a gallon, I go, oh, do I? Is it worth it? Every time you ask yourself, I'm sure everybody does that,
and
right? And so that's
there is another point to this too. There's a website out there. It's called Top Tier Gas. Okay, you can literally Google top tier gas. Top tier gas, all that means is the top economic detergents that they're putting into the fuel. Those actually aid into the carbon buildup. They help clean those things out. They burn a little bit more efficient. Now, not every gas station has top tier gas, but that top tier gas will actually show you in your zip code what gas stations actually have that. And like around here, BPs have it and Marathons have it, those types of things. And there's extra detergents in there to aid in that. So if you are going to use an 87, if you are needing to use the lower grade, at least try to go on to that top tier gas to figure out which ones have the best detergents, which ones are the most sought after. And they might not be the cheapest gas stations, but they are going to at least guarantee you that they have those top tier detergents.
Yeah, so finding a better quality gas, not just so much, going to the lowest priced, higher premium, might actually be a better alternative.
It could be.
Yeah. And one more last thing, I know with Acura having more turbocharged engines now, more than ever, is there a difference in terms of that? I know, a lot of cars who have had turbo engines, with regards to premium fuel, is it more recommended to put premium fuel on a turbocharged car, or is it still kind of the same as what we just talked about?
It pretty much is about the same. Okay. A lot has to do with the high pressure fuel system that's in them, more so than the turbocharger. The turbocharger is just creating more air. Right. By creating the more air, then you have a more of efficient cooling off everything and those types of things. It does aid into the fuel economy. Right. It's not a sport type of turbocharger that a lot of aftermarket companies make and those types of things, but it is made for the fuel economy, and that it's just another thing. It's no different than like your lungs and your heart and those types of things. Very similar to that, just a different piece of the puzzle.
So on that note, and we touched on it a little bit before, if you're using your vehicle and you decide to go to a lower grade because whether either you think that maybe I can save a little bit of money, or you just don't feel it's worth it or whatever, and you do start to hear what they call knocking or, pinging noises out of the engine, you probably should just switch back. I mean, I don't think you take any chances at that point.
First call us.
That's true,
and then I would definitely...
because the knock is definitely a problem, right? It's
Correct.
not, I mean, you can, let's just deal with it knocking. There's something going on there, right?
Before we even hear knocking, typically, you're going to hear more of a whistling sound. That's what we actually hear. And a lot of that has to do with the high pressure fuel. So you're getting a lot of buildup on those injectors and stuff like that. So it might not actually be squirting the right amount of gas because of the buildup and stuff like that happens. So you'll hear a high pitched chirping sound, almost like a bird, and it almost sounds like a dry belt or something like that that's going off, but that literally is the high pressure fuel. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that happens now. Every car's a fingerprint. They're all different, so you don't know. But any abnormal sounds or any abnormal different frequencies that you're hearing definitely should be brought into service. But first off, if you want to try, I would go back to what the manufacturer recommends.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure we're doing right by our customers and clients to say, hey, because we don't have any. We don't work for the oil companies either, and
sure.
At the end of the day, we want to make sure their car's running as efficiently as possible.
Absolutely, and you definitely don't want to. I know how we are in service. We don't want to strong arm people into saying that, hey, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. But that's reality. If you don't use on a at least more normal basis of what the manufacturer recommends, there are going to be consequences down the road. And that's not saying that you can't use them from time to time, but we definitely try to prohibit people having to buy catalytic converters and those types of things that eventually will go out.
And we're more than happy to provide those services. But yeah.
Well, that's some good stuff. I don't know if we muddied the water or cleared it up, but I learned a little bit there about premium fuel versus regular, and I know it definitely is painful right now. These gas prices gone up. Hopefully they come down someday, but as of right now, it's still a choice you're gonna have to make at the pump.
Yeah.
I don't think the money difference is what you need to pay attention to. Obviously, the premium fuel is not what made gas $4.90 a gallon. Gas went up, period.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it seems like the gap's big, but it's the same as really, essentially what it was.
Right, and keep in mind the numbers you talked about earlier is if you're only using the lowest, not not talking about the people who are using the mid grade sometimes.
Right.
So really, that gap may not be as big as you think it might be. So.
And as long as I've been in this business, the funny thing has never happened is the fact that I don't get a lot of customers with premium fuel with fuel issues from the gas stations. It's mostly 87 that they get bad fuel.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting.
It's kind of an interesting thing that I'm not saying it can't happen, but a lot of times that 91 is sitting in that tank, and the way that it burns and everything, it actually will burn off a little bit of moisture a lot better than 87. So people fill up with 87 and they have, their check engine light comes on or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
hey, you guys heard it here first.
right. And by no means do we condone any of the gas stations.
Correct.
No.
Or the gas.
Correct.
Right.
However that goes. So, hey, Todd, thank you so much. I know we're picking your brain on a touchy subject. It is we'll cover some simple things as we go down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
We appreciate you taking some time to sit in on it. Hopefully, like I said, everybody got something out of that, and it makes a little more sense to you. Like I said, we'll probably never have a black and white answer to that because it really is at your discretion. But the cars have changed a lot over the years. I know if you have an Acura that says required premium fuel, you probably should just use premium fuel in it. You shouldn't take any chances. That car's not designed for that.
Yeah.
Probably won't run right for very long not using premium fuel.
Yeah.
The new ones can adjust. They do adjust to, change the timing and such to adjust for that fuel. But it's probably not the greatest practice for a long-term purpose.
That's what the engineers recommend. That's what I always tell people. So we're not the ones that built the car.
Right.
And those people know what they're doing. And But yeah, Todd, thank you so much for stopping in.
Thanks for having me.
You guys can let us know if you want Todd back or if you never want to see him again. That's up to you guys. You know, we're gonna have him back either way.
Right, we're gonna still have him back. So, but comments, questions, please keep them coming. Again, on this subject, I don't know how much farther we can dive into as far as the actual, chemical breakdown of any of it. I don't know that it matters. You just want to know what button to push when you go to the gas and what's going to happen when it really comes down to it. So,
and if there's other service questions, there's a ton.
We're always here for you.
Yeah, that's right.
This is the guy. So please put them in there, and we'll talk to you again here soon.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.